The International Dairy Foods Organization says the U.S. produces the most cheese in the world. Cheese making has been documented back at least 4,000 years. In the past decade, more than 36 Virginia cheesemakers have received international acclaim for their artisan cheeses. It's part of a local foods boom that started decades ago with Virginia's resurgent wine industry.
The cheese is following wine, and we're really at that point where you're looking at cheese culture developing in Virginia. You're seeing that in small independent producers, farmstead cheeses, but you're also seeing it in some larger operations like Meadow Creek and Galax.
Cheesemongers like Mitchell say the environmental factors that give Virginia cheeses a unique flavor are called terroir. Just like Virginia wine varieties, cheeses receive their distinctive taste from where they are produced.
There's the industry term called terroir, or a sense of place, where things come from. And you're going to think about what are the ruminants, the sheep, goat, cows eating, and that's going to give a sense of what's there in the flora, and it's going to come through in the taste.
Virginia cheese is typically made from cow, sheep, or goat's milk. The Old Dominion's fertile soil and mild climate create an ideal terroir for raising dairy livestock. That is what brought Molly Kroiz and her husband Sam home from Washington State to become the 8th generation to work their family's Loudoun County farm. Here they produce George's Mill goat cheese with the help from their goat herd.
We put that milk into, in our case, if we're making fresh cheese, we would put it into our pasteurizer. So anything aged for less than 60 days in the U.S. has to be made with pasteurized milk as opposed to raw milk. So if we're making our fresh cheeses, we would pasteurize it first. And then after we've cooled the milk down to usually about between 75 and 90 degrees, depending on the type of cheese we're making, we add a bacterial culture. So cheese making is done through acidification of the milk and also the use of an enzyme called rennet, which helps to coagulate it.
Cheese is made when milk is curdled on purpose. Artisanal cheese refers to cheeses produced by hand using the traditional craftsmanship of skilled cheesemakers. Artisanal cheeses can take weeks, months, or even years to produce. Cow, goat, or sheep milk can be made into soft cheeses or aged into hard cheese types. Consumers are used to seeing familiar cheese varieties at the grocery store like Swiss, mozzarella, cheddar, American, and Parmesan. But the world of cheese goes far beyond. There are more than 1,700 different kinds of cheese to explore worldwide.
We're having to raise the goats, breed them, have their babies, take care of them through that whole period, milk them every day, take that milk and then turn it into cheese. So it's very much a value-added farm product, but it's still very much an agricultural endeavor. It's expensive, but you just have to rethink how you're using it. Sort of the same way that we need to rethink how much meat we eat, and you don't need to have hamburgers every meal. You also don't need to be eating huge amounts of cheese. Cheese is a really nutrient-dense food, and so you can get a lot out of a small piece of cheese.
Besides being high in protein, cheese also contains phosphorus, zinc, vitamin A, and even vitamin B12. It's a perfect food for your muscles, bones, and even your blood cells and heart. Once produced and aged, cheese is a very interesting food, full of complex flavors in one slice. That includes the rind or the hard outer coating.
This is the outermost layer of the cheese. It's where it's going to be exposed to air, and you can see on here the darker line. This is where it's going to lose moisture and have the most intense flavor. It might be more peppery or more assertive, but as part of the cheese, to understand the breadth of flavor, the center of the pâté against the rind, is something that's really nice to understand what the cheesemaker is intending to produce there.
In addition to being popular with consumers, artisanal cheese making is helping some Virginia dairies stay solvent. Fluid milk prices have been low for years, meaning dairy farmers have struggled to make a profit.
There's a lot of farms who have turned to cheese making as a way of saving their milk production, their dairy farm. And yeah, it definitely gives hope to some farmers that need it.
Virginia will host the annual conference for the American Cheese Society July 31st through August 3rd in Richmond. Thousands of cheesemakers will be in the Commonwealth to compete for awards and accolades. There will be a cheese tasting event open to the public on the last day of the conference. To learn more about the conference, go to cheesesociety.org.